Ask me how old I was when I first watched Harry Potter.
What?
Go on, ask.
Why don't you just tell
Just
me?
ask. I don't want...
Fine. How old were you when you first watched Harry Potter?
Excellent question. I'm sure everyone is wondering. The sad truth is, I don't remember.
So all that was a waste?
I do remember that I watched the movie before I read the book.
Fascinating.
Actually, let's back up a second and talk about the book. On June 26th, 1997, Bloomsbury Publishing Place published a short 223-page fantasy novel by one J.K. Rowling, titled Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone. The following year, it was published in the United States by Scholastic Corporation under the title Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone.
What does any of this have to do
The first book in the Harry Potter series, The Philosopher's Stone, follows young Harry Potter,
I'd never have guessed.
an orphaned wizard who only discovers his magical heritage on his 11th birthday.
You're a wizard, Harry.
Upon receiving his letter of acceptance to Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry, Harry Potter finds himself whisked away from his resentful aunt.
Resentful? Those people should be arrested for child abuse, neglect, and an account of being just
aunt, uncle, and cousin, and dropped into the majestic school beyond Harry's wildest imagination. There, he makes friends, he learns about magic and the magical world, and comes face to face with the man who killed his parents, the man who tried to kill him,
the man who failed to kill him.
It was a wildly successful book, winning multiple awards both in Britain and the US, reaching the top of the New York Times list of best-selling fiction in August 1999 and staying near the top of that list for much of 1999 and 2000.
This all really is interesting and everything, but I have to ask again, what does any of this have to do with anything?
Well, in 1999, Warner Brothers Pictures bought the film rights to the book for a reported £1 million. Yeah. And the rest is history. They got Chris Columbus to direct, Steve Kloves to write the screenplay, John Williams behind the musical genius, and after open casting calls announced Daniel Radcliffe as Harry Potter, Rupert Grint as Ron Weasley, and Emma Watson as Hermione Granger. It became the highest grossing film of 2001 and the second highest grossing film at the time. It was nominated for many awards, including the Academy Award for Best Original Score,
Obviously.
Best Art Direction, and Best Costume Design. So let's talk about it.
Finally! Roll credits!
It's not the credits, it's the intro.
Oh.
Well then, roll intro!
Dun 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 dun.
I haven't watched this movie in a long time, but I have watched it multiple times before, so I'm not gonna say it's a blind react, but like kinda, cause I haven't watched it in a while. So, right out of the gate, we have the music. Dun 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 dun. I was saying, okay, you guys should know that I am a huge music person. Like, sound in movies is the first thing I notice when I'm watching a movie, and I always notice it. Like, filmmakers try to be sneaky, getting you all in your feels with the music. Next thing you find yourself bawling your eyes out and you don't even know how you got there. Not me. I see you filmmakers a mile away. I pay attention to the music in the background.
The point?
Right, the point. The score of this film, oh my God. I have it all downloaded on my phone. I love, love, love the score of these movies. And it's the first thing we get as the movie begins, which tells you that they knew they had a killer score. What plays as we get the Warner Brothers logo? Can I sing it now? Sure. Dun 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 dun. That was actually really good. Thanks. So that theme is called the Prologue, Privet Drive. And it's probably one of the most recognizable of the music themes in Harry Potter. It grabs your attention right out of the gate and tells you something awesome's gonna happen in this movie. But then it fades out. It doesn't swell, it isn't interrupted by dialogue. Instead, it slowly fades into what sounds like individual bells. It creates a sound almost like wind chimes. Go on then. Dun 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 dun. It feels magical, delicate. That, coupled with the effect on screen that has everything looking like it's covered in mist but also glimmering at the same time, makes for a brilliant opening. You could have walked into the theater not knowing what Harry Potter was about, but the music and the look of the movie just manages to capture the essence of the book that in less than a minute you would be able to pick up the fantasy element. And there hasn't even been a line of dialogue yet. I should have known you would be here, Professor McGonagall. Yes, let's talk about Dumbledore for a second. In the books, I'm going to be pointing out the differences between the books and the movies a lot. Just because, we all know they're there, for better or worse, so why ignore them? The movies have scenes that weren't in the books, and I think some of them are great additions. But there are small things. Though I understand why they'd be cut or why the writers thought they didn't matter, I will be pointing them out, especially when it relates to characters. Because while I love the books and the movies, I don't think it can be argued that the characters aren't always portrayed well. I think that boils down to some of the decisions made in small, seemingly insignificant scenes like this one. In the books, Dumbledore is one of my favorite characters. I find him to be such an odd man in a quirky sort of way. And in universe, people often comment on how mad he is. He doesn't behave in a way that one would expect an extremely powerful, highly respected wizard to act. This opening scene in the book is an example of that. McGonagall is trying to get information out of him, and he's so aloof, as if he's not really a part of the conversation. He's answering her questions, but he's not invested at all. McGonagall is trying to find out if the rumors about you-know-who are true, and he's like, would you like a sherbet lemon? Exactly. Or taking the conversation in weird tangents like, it's lucky it's dark. I haven't blushed this much since Madame Pomfrey told me she liked my new earmuffs. Until McGonagall mentions the Potters. Dumbledore is ignoring her in favor of sweets and making jokes about blushing until she mentions the Potters. And then he becomes serious. In hindsight, I think it's probably more than just his sadness at their death. I think that since he was the one who was supposed to be protecting them after Snape begged him, I think he's feeling their deaths just a little bit more personally. Anyway, this scene in the book gave us two Dumbledores. Weird Dumbledore and weighed down by heavy burden Dumbledore. And we watched this struggle throughout the books. In the movies, quirky, aloof, everyone always questioning his sanity Dumbledore is sacrificed in favor of this serious, powerful, weighed down by heavy burden Dumbledore. And that is where I think they lost his character. It's why adapting him in following movies where things just got darker became harder to do, until it became, honestly, a running gag among fans. Harry! Did you put your name in the goblet of fire? I think they all knew what I meant. Like I said, I understand why they would cut the scene and just have Dumbledore confirm the rumors right off the bat. We have a lot of ground to cover, so we don't need to spend so much time on eating sweets. But it's a trend that ultimately leaves the character less fleshed out. Speaking of ground to cover, can we move on? You just want to get to the scene with the Dursleys so you can... How many are there? We're not 36, but last year I had 37. Can you stop it so I can continue? I don't care how big they are. All right. We have a masterful transition through baby Harry's scar that takes us to the title card and then into the future 10 years to Dudley's birthday. Go on then.
I've already done it.
They go to the zoo. Harry talks to a snake.
Typical. Can we take a moment to appreciate Fiona Shaw's acting in this scene? Brilliant.
And then Uncle Vernon tells Harry the fattest lie that ever lived.
There's no such thing as magic.
I really don't like that man.
I think that's the point. It's at this point that we get the mystery of the letters. And okay, I've always wondered, how do they, the people at Hogwarts, is it Dumbledore who writes these letters? Anyway, how do they know that Harry hasn't read the letters? If anyone knows, please let me know, because I can't see how they do. Are you supposed to write a letter back saying, cool, thanks, I'll be there? And if you don't, they just flood your house with letters? In one of the versions, an extended version, I guess, or something, there's a scene of Aunt Petunia cracking eggs and instead a letter comes out. How did they even do that? Who did that? That's funny. I bet it's Dumbledore. You know, Dumbledore likes playing tricks. Lol.
And then we get the very famous scene that has been turned into several of my favorite memes. Exhibit A of why Harry isn't in Ravenclaw. Yeah. We've all seen the memes. If you don't mind, we have a whole movie to get through. So, it's Harry's birthday, and I had a thought as I was rewatching this. The Dursleys had to have told Harry when his birthday was. Like, we don't just instinctively know when our birthday is. We're told over several years. In fact, I dare say we only know our birthday is coming up without having to be told when we're 5, 6? Which means that every year until Harry was at least 5 years old, the Dursleys would tell him that it was his birthday and then not celebrate it. They're worse than we thought, guys. Like I said, they deserve jail time.
Luckily for Harry, Hagrid shows up and shakes up his life. Go on, do it.
You're a wizard, Harry.
Rude.
This is another scene that they shortened from the book, and I don't really understand why. I don't know why they couldn't just spare a few more lines of dialogue to let Hagrid have the outburst that he has in the book, where he's outraged that Harry doesn't know anything about who he is or how his parents died.
And in the book, it's so funny. It's a comical scene with Vernon standing up to Hagrid despite being terrified, showing just how much they really hate all this magic business. And it ends with Hagrid trying to turn Dudley into a whole ass pig. Thank God that didn't work, eh?
But anyway, just like that, Harry is saved from his sad life of abuse and transported into the magical world.
Wait, I would just like to point out that on Harry's birthday cake, Hagrid spelled happy Happee. Like what? Why?
When Harry walks through the archway into Diagon Alley, the music swells so beautifully. It really makes you feel the magic. You feel like something wondrous has just been revealed, and regardless of what it would have looked like, I think, we still would have been filled with a sense of awe because the music demands it. This theme is called Diagon Alley and the Gringotts Vault. I can't play it, but luckily we have Leonard. Sing it, Leonard. Dun 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 dun. Thank you. Now that we're really into the magical part of the movie, let's talk about the visual effects. Considering this came out in 2001, I think the effects look great. The goblins in Gringotts, for example, still look pretty good to me. I mean, okay, they obviously look fake, but considering the times, I think they've aged pretty well.
And I like the teeth. It makes them look menacing, even though they're tiny and walk like penguins.
Now, here we have one of those scenes that I wish they hadn't cut from the movie. Allow me to rant for a minute. It's a short scene with Harry and Malfoy getting fitted for their school robes, and I can see why the director of the movie decided to cut it, but I think it holds a little bit of importance. When Harry meets Malfoy, His first thought is that he reminds him of Dudley, and that's why he doesn't like him so much. It's why he doesn't accept Malfoy's invitation of friendship later on the Hogwarts Express. And I've always believed it contributes a little bit to his begging not to be in Slytherin. Okay, obviously, Hagrid telling him that Voldemort was in Slytherin is a bigger part of that decision. But I think that Malfoy was a face that Harry could put to what he didn't want to be. Something like, if a boy like Malfoy, like Dudley, wanted to be in Slytherin, then Harry knew for sure that it was a bad house. I don't know if this makes sense, but I've always thought that taking the scene out of the movie, while not detrimental to the plot, I think it took away the larger effect of Harry growing up with the Dursleys. It was exactly what Dumbledore wanted when he placed Harry with them. Obviously, besides the protection they offer that we learn about later. He didn't want Harry growing up knowing he was famous. If he'd grown up in the wizarding world, he very well could have turned out just like Malfoy, or grown up with friends like Malfoy. Instead, he grew up with a spoiled cousin that bullied him and an aunt and uncle that turned their noses up at everyone. This is what shapes Harry into the selfless kid that befriends the poor Weasleys and Muggle-born Hermione and the oddballs that were Luna and Neville. And obviously, this isn't all encapsulated in his scene with Malfoy, but I think that showing that Harry disliked Malfoy for being spoiled and prejudiced against Muggleborns, even though Harry didn't know anything about what that prejudice really meant, it shows Harry's real character, even before he does anything brave. You okay? Yeah. Let's just move on. Okay. Hagrid apparates. He doesn't apparate. I'm pretty sure he does. Because how else does he just disappear like that? He's a big man. A giant. He can't just disappear. Hagrid can't apparate. Where does it say that? And don't say J.K. Rowling tweeted it. That's what I thought. So, with all his school supplies, a wand, and an owl, Harry is abandoned. Don't say it like that. Harry has to try and find his way onto platform 9 3/4. He's saved by the Weasleys, meets Ron, and makes his first friend. On the train, we get to see our first hidden clue that we don't even know is a clue yet. Nicholas Flamel. I think they get that. The child actors honestly aren't doing a bad job. In my opinion, Rupert Grint is doing the best job, but they're all not doing badly. Hermione comes in, and I like that straight out of the gate, she has so much disdain for Ron. Like, she's already disgusted by him. I find it hilarious. That's why their love story is so weird to me. Yeah, you're not the only one. Anyway, we finally get to Hogwarts, and it looks gorgeous. Like, 22 years later, it still looks fantastic. And then we meet Draco. Think my name's funny, do ya? No need to ask yours. Red hair and a hand-me-down robe. You must be a Weasley. They all get sorted. Harry into Gryffindor. I'm be honest with you guys. I think that the sorting hat is wrong, and that actually Percy is supposed to be in Slytherin. Because, I mean, seriously, he's the most ambitious person in this whole story. He's so ambitious that he puts his professional idols above, like, trusting his family. He'd rather side with the ministry because his job and his boss and all of that kind of stuff instead of his family. That's ambition, like, crazy. And, like, he is so proud. I don't know why he wasn't put in Slytherin. Slytherin's supposed to be the house for evil people, but, like, if you think about it logically, Percy's a Slytherin. Then Dumbledore gives his announcement. The dark forest is strictly forbidden to all students, except when you serve detention in the dead of night and are told to roam around it on your own. And then they have the feast of a lifetime. Poor Harry's been starved all his life, but when I watch this scene, even I get so hungry. Even if there are ghosts floating through the food. That scene is actually a little funny. Because if you really pay attention, you can see that the kids don't know where they're supposed to look. Like, obviously, the ghosts aren't there on set, right? So they're basically talking and reacting to the air, which I know that's hard. But it's just funny to see them looking around aimlessly, like, trying their best. They're like acting. But what the director does, that's clever, is cut between the ghosts and the kids instead of having them all in the same scene. So that makes it harder to notice that they're looking in completely random directions. And after all this time, the ghost effects still look great. I mean, this is basically what ghosts look like in movies today. Speaking of effects that still look great, McGonagall's transition from a cat. I mean, come on. Why were the effects of this movie so good? McGonagall is an icon. First of all, I know she gets some pleasure out of scaring her first years with this trick. True. Because why else is she sitting on the desk as a cat? Everyone else is doing work, so she must have already given them instructions, which means that she was human. Then she's just straight up savage. She's like, "Oh, thank you for that assessment, Mr. Weasley. Perhaps it would be more useful if I were to transfigure Mr. Potter or yourself into a pocket watch. That way one of you might be on time." Do you think she can actually turn a person into a pocket watch? Perhaps a map. I trust you don't need one to find your seats. All hail Maggie Smith. She was the perfect McGonagall. That's Dame Maggie Smith to you. Oh, yes. My bad. The casting was actually really spot on, in my opinion, because Alan Rickman completely embodies Snape. The way he delivers the lines with all his pauses and his eye squints, he just really got Snape. I've never had or heard any complaints about Alan Rickman's performance. You were talking about scenes that were cut and affected character. Talk about this one. Why? Because in the book, Harry is sassy and has a really short temper, but they don't really show that in the movies. Like this scene. He has enough of Snape asking him questions he doesn't know the answer to, so he's like, "I don't know. But Hermione does. Seems a pity not to ask her." Like, he just can't help himself. He cannot sit there and take Snape's abuse. That's true. And again, it's a very short scene. I know it's in one of the versions because I swear I've seen it, but I don't know. I don't know why they decided to cut it. Instead, we just cut to Seamus failing to do magic. What's so important about that? I heard that in these scenes where the students were supposed to be doing homework, they had the actors do their actual homework. So all those confused faces and head scratches are genuine confusion. Like the child actors are just struggling to do math. Relatable. And then we get Exhibit B of why Harry isn't in Ravenclaw.
Eye of rabbit, harp string home. Turn this water into rum.
What's Seamus trying to do to that water? Come on, Harry. Anyway, it's in this scene that our mystery finally begins. The vault has been broken into, and Harry realizes that it's the same vault he went to with Hagrid. But we don't spend too much time on that. It's just something for our detectives to think on for a moment, because they have flying lessons to get to. I have so many issues with Madam Hooch in this scene, because I feel like, considering this is a first ever flying lesson, she should have been more prepared, like just more on top of things. Accidents are bound to happen. Some of these kids are muggle-born and never even knew brooms could fly. So maybe don't trust that when you say,
"Hover for a moment, then lean forward slightly and touch back down."
they're going to A, listen, and B, be able to control the broom. Yeah, it does seem like she should have been able to do more to keep Neville safe. Like an immobilization charm or something, to keep him from flying around like that and falling to what seriously could have been his death. Watching kids fall to their death seems to be Madam Hooch's specialty though. She does it in Harry's first... Hold on, we're not there yet. So, Neville nearly dies, and Malfoy takes this as an opportunity to make jokes, which doesn't sit right with Harry. Malfoy throws the Remembrall, Harry catches it, and returns to the ground a hero. McGonagall straight ass flew from her office to wherever these kids are having their flying lessons. Wait, why isn't it the Quidditch pitch, by the way? Anyway, Harry flies at full speed to catch the Remembrall, and then flies back, and by the time he's touching down, McGonagall is already walking towards them. Please, let's remember the inside of Hogwarts is like a maze, and has moving staircases. So, McGonagall can fly. New headcanon. I mean, there are secret passageways. That's how Filch gets it. McGonagall can fly! Okay. Well, since you brought up the moving staircases, I have something to say. It seems to me that if the staircase moves and takes you to the third floor corridor that you aren't allowed to be on, then that's not your fault. You weren't intending to go there and you can't control the stairs. First of all, this whole moving staircase thing is already so crazy. Because, like you said, you can't control it. So imagine how late they can make you. Imagine if you're rushing to Transfiguration and only have one more flight of stairs and then boom, they move. And now you're on the other side of the castle and have to maneuver your way all the way back around. I wonder who designed them like that. Someone had to put the charm on the stairs when they were building Hogwarts. Must be the founders then. My money's on Gryffindor. He seems the type to find that funny. Anyway, our three main characters find themselves on the third floor corridor they're not supposed to be on, and instead of running away, they run further into it, coming face to face with the giant three-headed dog that you have to wonder how they got it in there. What? Do you think they put him to sleep and then levitated him all the way into the room so he just woke up and found himself trapped? I mean, Dumbledore and Hagrid are the only ones who know how to tame him, so I bet Hagrid was playing his flute to make sure Fluffy stayed asleep, walking behind Dumbledore as he levitated the monster through the school. Sure. Why not? Where was I? They escape Fluffy and Hermione loses her shit. It's actually not fair that she blamed Harry and Ron for this. They all ran into the corridor, and then she's the one that opens the door that leads to Fluffy. They didn't ask her to do it. She just decides to. So why she then says, "If you two don't mind, I'm going to bed before either of you come up with another clever idea to get us killed, or worse, expelled." Doesn't make sense. I love Emma Watson, okay? But it just has to be said. She really overacts, at least in this movie. You're going to take someone's eye out. Besides, you're saying it wrong. She's trying her best, but she's really feeling those lines. Look at this feast. I bet the kids were more than happy to shoot this scene. I think it was like the director or something in an interview, saying that Rupert Grint's favorite scenes were the ones with food, because he just got to eat all day long. I don't blame him. If I was 11 years old and I had all this Halloween candy in front of me, I would eat it all too. He knew what was up. He got an ice cream truck when they finished the last movie. Priorities. I don't know what the directors of these movies were not understanding about Dumbledore. Because this scene proves that it's not necessarily Michael Gambon's fault for the infamous scene in Goblet of Fire. It was the directors. Dumbledore isn't a shouting kind of guy. He's the kind of guy who strikes fear with just a look. He commanded respect with his presence, not by yelling like this. Silence! And now we get into the scene that actually really does disturb me. They make a small change here, but it marks the beginning of these movies taking away from Ron to give to Hermione. In the book, Hermione is so terrified in this moment that she can't move. She can't run when Harry tries to get her to. She can't think of a spell, let alone perform any magic. She can't even talk. She's paralyzed with fear. Harry is Mr. Action. He comes up with a plan to distract it, and when Ron is in danger, jumps on the bloody troll like the mad boy he is. But what does Ron do in this scene? Is he standing stupidly like in the movie? No! He is as much a part of the distraction as Harry. And then, when Harry is in danger of being clobbered by the Trolls Club, he, on his own, performs the levitation spell. He doesn't need to be coached through it by Hermione, and doesn't wait for Harry to be like,
Do something! What? Anything!
He sees his friends in danger, and he thinks of a solution quickly. I hate that in the movies they make Hermione show him how to do it. It's a small thing, not really a big deal, but it's the beginning of a trend. It happens again when they go through the trapdoor, and I hate it so much. Apparently, the director's favorite character was Hermione, so they make her this perfect kind of character who's always right and always prepared and always the one to come to the rescue. And yes, she is a brilliant witch and does save them all countless times. But for heaven's sake, she has flaws. She gets scared. She was on the floor, useless in this moment. Ron was in it with Harry, just as brave as Harry, and he was talented enough to think of a spell and then get the spell right under pressure without needing a tutorial. What matters is that they survive, right? I guess. They survive, and the professors show up. Quirrell in this scene. He's in the background, but the actor is just so in character here. Like really selling that nervous, twitchy energy that Quirrell has. Anyway, Hermione gets the boys out of trouble and they become best friends. Why do you think she didn't just say the truth? She could have said she was in the bathroom during the feast so she didn't know about the troll and Harry and Ron came to tell her. They didn't know the troll was there. They were told it was in the dungeon. I don't know. But she lies and that's what makes them all friends. Another headcanon. McGonagall is a massive Quidditch fan. Because otherwise, I don't understand why she gets Harry a new broom. The newest model out there. Like, there are school brooms he could use. But she's like, Gryffindor is going to win this year and I'm going to ensure it. She doesn't just make sure Harry is an exception to the no first years are allowed a broom rule, but buys him the most expensive one. When it comes to Quidditch, McGonagall don't play. It's the only time she gives Gryffindor special treatment. Quidditch. The game with so many problems. As a sport, fine. We have a lot of rough sports like rugby and American football. So I understand some games are brutal. But this is a game played in the air. So if you fall, you're falling like 20, 30, 40 feet, if not more. That's death. But my issue is with Quidditch at Hogwarts. Because Harry is 11 years old. He's just been introduced to flying as a concept and has had, 2 months of practice on a broom? So this is like Little League Quidditch, right? It's not the pros, and some of these players aren't even teenagers, so it can't even be like college level. It's Little League. So seems to me there should be rules for their protection. Like, until you reach a certain age, you shouldn't be playing with, say, actual bludgers. Those things are dangerous. They broke Harry's bones in his second year. Exactly. This is serious. Like, it's so dangerous. I don't understand how it's possible. There should be a lot more rules in Quidditch at Hogwarts than there are. And somebody present who can actually protect the kids from falling to their deaths if something happens. Because Madam Hooch is useless. Like, in this first game, Harry's broom gets bewitched, right? And nobody stops the game. They just watch him like, oh my god, he's gonna fall? Even the professors. Even Madam Hooch, who herself is on a broom in the pitch. Harry was going to fall and he was going to die. So I don't understand how the game wasn't stopped. Even when Oliver Wood is hit by a bludger and falls off his broom, through the hoop to the floor and doesn't get up, no one does anything. McGonagall honestly just looks like she's thinking, oh, this isn't good for us. We don't have a keeper now. Right? There's no medic, not even Madame Pomfrey. Or when another Gryffindor player is hit and falls through the stands, no one goes to check if she's alive. This is a child of maximum 15 years old, I think, because Wood was the oldest on the team, right? And he was 5th year. So how are they not more concerned? Quidditch is a brutal game. Let's move on before I have a stroke. Okay, if you ask me, it's a little cruel to have Hagrid pulling these giant Christmas trees, probably from the forest, into the Great Hall. You have teachers who have magic. They can levitate those trees just like Dumbledore levitated Fluffy. Like, look at the scene right here. Look at how many trees there are. Hagrid had to carry all those trees. Plus, the massive tree at the front. I mean, if you think about it, that's cruel. Let's not think too hard about that then. Let's move on to the wildest detention ever. First, McGonagall takes 150 points from Gryffindor, which, ma'am, that is alarmingly high. Like, there's being harsh and then there's being sadistic. 150 points from her own house? After spending so much money to make sure Harry wins them as many points as possible, she takes 50 from Malfoy. So, okay, I guess it has to be more than that. But she could have said 70. 50 each is so painful. The punishment does not fit the crime. It really does not. Then you have Filch and David Bradley. That's the actor playing Filch. I mean, he's doing a great job. But then he starts talking about the old punishments, how he misses the days when they hung students by their feet from the ceiling. And I can't even begin to imagine when that was happening. Actually, yeah. Because how old is Filch? He was born in 1951, so he's only 40 in this book. Which means that if he started working at Hogwarts when he was 17, since that's the age of adulthood in the Wizarding World, then at some point in the 60s, these guys were hanging students from the ceiling by their ankles. I find that incredible. Because that means that Molly and Arthur Weasley, who were at Hogwarts during this time, probably had to serve these kinds of detentions. It also means that Dumbledore was at Hogwarts when all these medieval punishments were taking place. He became headmaster either late 1969 or like early 1970. So I bet it's the first thing he scrapped when he became headmaster. Man, Hogwarts really becomes dark when you think about it. Let's go back to not thinking too hard about it. Quick, say something else. Okay. So, I know I said that the effects aren't so bad in this movie, considering the year it was made, but just look at the centaur. I'm sorry, but it's just not holding up. Yeah, that does not look good. But after Harry encounters this not so good looking CGI centaur in the woods, he and the gang decide they have to stop Snape and go through the trap door. And we arrive at Exhibit B of taking away from Ron to give to Hermione. This scene has Ron panicking, basically for nothing, since if he calmed down, he'd be perfectly safe. And that's not how it's supposed to be. In the book, the Devil's Snare is going to crush Ron and Harry to death if Hermione doesn't act quickly. And she doesn't. She's the one that panics. She knows it's Devil's Snare, but she can't think of what she's supposed to do. Harry suggests she lights a fire. And Hermione goes, "Of course, but there's no wood." There's no wood. Our girl, once again, panicking in a crisis. Ron has to remind her that she's a witch before she casts a spell that saves them. See, these are the character moments that I think are important. Like this, it gives Hermione room to grow. Bravery and adventure don't come as easily to her as they do to Harry and Ron. And over the course of the story, she gets better and better at keeping her head straight in these tense situations. But in the movies, she's just cool as a cucumber. Like I keep saying, it's the small things that build up over time to change characters. Anyway, they survive the Devil's Snare and go on to the next deadly trap. Now, this room with the keys has a door that can't be opened by Alohomora. Of course, it's possible that since it's Ron that casts the spell, not Hermione, that he didn't do it right. No. I think the whole point of this room is that the door can only open with the right key. So if it's possible to project the door from the Alohomora spell, why on earth don't they do this to the door that leads to Fluffy? This is a school. Students like to break rules. Yeah, I imagine that like the Weasley twins would be curious to know why they can't go to the third floor corridor. Exactly. So why not put up an added barrier? Make sure that they can't open the damn door in the first place. These are people who send children into the Forbidden Forest alone at midnight, so maybe we shouldn't expect too much from them. Yeah, true. Anyway, they go through and wind up on the chessboard. And here, did you know that in this scene, Rupert Grint actually gets injured? After the Queen spears his horse and he falls off all dramatic-like and there's explosions going on everywhere, there's a rock that cuts his head. You can actually see it happening. Right there. Then, at last, Harry faces his enemy. Quirrell! Bum, bum, bum! With Voldemort on the back of his head. Like, yikes! This is the stuff of nightmares, people. It sets Voldemort up as a villain you actually fear, because what kind of magic allows you to be a spirit that lives on the back of people's heads? Here's a question. Do you think that Voldemort doubted Snape for a bit after his return? Because, he has to remember how hard Snape worked all this year to protect Harry. Snape was all, "Remember where your loyalties lie," to Quirrell. And of course, he didn't know that Voldemort was with Quirrell, but Voldy was there for all of that. So did he think that Snape had turned sides? Interesting. Maybe. But there were lots of Death Eaters that had forsaken him, but came back when he returned in Order of the Phoenix, and he gave them chances to prove their loyalty, so I think he probably did the same with Snape. Makes sense. Harry is made of stern stuff. If I killed someone just by touching them, I think I would be a little more freaked out than he is. Like, he asks Dumbledore what happened, but even in the book, he's not losing his mind over the apparent powers that he has. Let's actually talk about Dumbledore one more time. This is the Dumbledore we deserved all the way through. Once Richard Harris dies, R.I.P., and Michael Gambon takes over, Dumbledore's energy changes.
Did you put your name in the goblet?
And I wish we could have gotten to see Richard Harris's performance all the way through.
Alas, we'll never know what could have been.
Sad but true. At least we'll always have these moments. And the one where Dumbledore snatches the house cup from Slytherin and gives it to Gryffindor. Okay, so I'm a Slytherin. I've taken the sorting quiz twice, once when it was Pottermore and once when they changed it to the Wizarding World, and both times I was put in Slytherin. If I was at Hogwarts at this moment, I would have been outraged. Slytherin worked hard for all their points. I'm a Gryffindor, and I don't think it's so unfair that Dumbledore does this. Because, first of all, we've already discussed that the 150 points that McGonagall took was so unfair. So it makes sense that Dumbledore returns at least some of those. And then, think about what Harry did. He faced Voldemort and survived. Stopped him from returning to power. That deserves something. Fine. Yeah, fair enough. But still, as a Slytherin, that is so painful. But I get it. We hate Malfoy and Snape, so Slytherin can't win.
And here we are, at the end of all things.
Hagrid giving Harry this photo album makes me feel so many things. It's just so thoughtful and touching, and poor baby Harry. Like, with the Mirror of Erised, all he wanted to do was sit there all night and look at his family. Just look at them. So now, Hagrid is giving him a way to do this without wasting away in front of a magical mirror. And Daniel Radcliffe does a great job in this scene. His acting really takes you there. Like, look, when he looks up at Hagrid with these reddish, watery eyes, and just, oh, man, he looks so emotional, and it guts me. The whole scene is just a perfect ending to the story. At the end of the day, Harry Potter is a movie about love and sacrifice. And ending it with a reminder of the sacrifice Harry's parents made and the love that he still has for them, it's sweet and it just warms my heart. And then it ends. It had to, eventually. All in all, I think it's a perfect little adventure story. It's made for young viewers, but it's entertaining to everyone. And the perfect introduction to this world on the big screen. Okay, so what would you rate it? Ooh. It's not my favorite movie. But that's mostly because as the story goes along, characters are more developed and the plot gets darker and therefore more interesting, but it's the first one. The one that started it all. So for that, I think I'd give it a 7.5 out of 10. Solid. I'd give it maybe 6.9 as a standalone movie, but 8 as a book adaptation. Okay, not bad. So we can round that off to like 7.9. Nice. Let's see how that compares to Chamber of Secrets, which we'll be covering next. I love Chamber of Secrets. Great. So we can go watch it now and then come back ready to talk about it. Thanks for watching. Bye.